weird horror, gothic horror, boggy horror, folk horror, thrillers. I read a lot of horror this month. So let's tell you about everything I read in the month of May. First up, we have Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub. This is the second book in the Talisman series. I hadn't planned to read this year. I was only planning on reading the first Talisman, but then it turns out that the Talisman 3 comes out in October of this year, so I was like, well, we definitely need to read Black House. Black House is a totally different animal from the Talisman, whereas the Talisman is like dark fantasy. Black House is still kind of dark fantasy, but it's also all like crime and horror, and it is way faster paced. And you're following Jack Sawyer, who is the main character in this. In the Talisman, he was like 12 years old and he went on this epic quest. And then in this one, he is like 34. He's a retired LA detective. It's got a very like odd, eerie Twin Peaks type vibe to it, and I love that. Next up, we have You Did Nothing Wrong by C.J. Drews. This book I randomly picked up, and I don't think I was prepared for the absolute derangedness that this is. This is a haunted house book? Question mark. Follows the story of this couple that gets married, and the woman in this, she had a son prior to them being married. He seems like he's autistic, but she doesn't want him to be tested for it or diagnosed for whatever reason. She's like terrified that he'll be taken from her, but so this becomes like a big rift between her and her husband. She tries to hide a lot of her son's like mannerisms and his anger issues and all this stuff, which it's like, you're married to him, you live in the same house, this isn't going to be hidden for long, lady. But she's very angry when stuff comes up, like any mention of taking him to a doctor or this, that, and the other. So, and then they're in this old house that used to be her husband's parents' house. And the parents died in a really tragic way, and the husband had seen it happen. The sister of the husband says to the wife, she's like, hey, just so you know, he's kind of a fixer, so you guys need to get on the same page with like about raising children and how you want to do that, this, that, and the other. And she's very cryptic about it and weird, and so this kind of like weirds out the wife. Also, like, he's refurbishing this house and like renovating it, and like weird stuff starts to happen. Like the woman's kid like thinks he's hearing voices and scratching and stuff in the walls, and he thinks like the house, he says like the house doesn't like them, the house thinks you're bad and thinks that he's bad and all this. And then at some point it seems like underneath the wallpaper, it looks like the walls are bleeding. One day husband comes home and the woman's like, hey, can you see this? Am I seeing this? This looks like the walls are bleeding. And he's like, old houses, do. And he like says a bunch of crap. He's like, I'll take care of it, don't worry about it, it's fine. She gets a sneaking suspicion that maybe he just like wallpapered over it, and she starts hearing things in the house, like almost like the house is breathing and weird stuff is happening, and hearing maybe footsteps where no one is there. And so at some point she like looks behind the wallpaper, and he just wallpapered right over it. It still looks like it's bleeding and all this crap is happening. And so it like escalates into this descent into madness, and it's an absolutely insane like haunted house psychological horror, and it was pretty awesome. I have a standalone review for that if you want more info on that. And in that, I actually remember the names of the characters off the top of my head. I can't think of what the characters' names are right now, so that's why I kept saying husband, wife. Okay, so after that one I read, this is my round 2 with the author John Mars, and I read When You Disappeared. And my first experience of him, it was like super disturbing, because the prior book that I read, Dead in the Water, the main character was so focused on like being killed over and over again because he thought that like somehow this would solve his problems. It was very disturbing, the whole mindset of the main character, and I was like, God, are all his books that effed up? So this one wasn't as horribly disturbing, still disturbing, but not at that level. And the premise too is like, there's this husband who one day wakes up and just like leaves his wife, doesn't say anything, and she's like, why would this happen? Why did he leave our family? This, that, and the other. But apparently he's got all these like dark secrets. And then so she's just like wondering for all these years, like, what the F happened to him? And then he reappears in her life 25 years later. And it's like, why would he just like get a divorce? Or like, why did he run away? And then now he's back? Like, why? And this whole premise, you're like, how is this going to work? This sounds like it'd be tough to string together as a story. It's strung together so well, and it's dark, and it's disturbing, and it's a page turner. And I feel like this author is like one of those authors. If you want a good like horror / thriller beach read, John Mars, Darcy Coates, like they're page turners, they're page burners. And even when they're not like an amazing, amazing book, you still need to know what's going to happen next. Like it's still a good, this one was, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I flew through the pages and it's a crazy careening story as you find out where the husband was all these years and what he did and all the effed up stuff he did and like how this woman, like she grew and all the things she went through and just becoming this better version of herself that she probably never would have become if he was still in her life. I would say I definitely liked it better than the other John Mars book I read, but the other one was still like, it was a page turner. Okay, after that, I read one of my most anticipated horror reads of the year, which is Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker. I had read one other book of hers called Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang, and that was gruesomely gory and fantastic and effed up and deranged. And this book, it follows this story that is these two different timelines between these characters, a century apart, and they find a door between worlds. The one character, Lee, he has killed his college roommate. He doesn't remember why or how or for what reasons, but he knows he needs to flee the US, and so he goes to live with his dad in Japan at this house that is like this old samurai house. At night, he sees this woman in the yard with a katana. But here's the thing, she sees him too through the window. And when she runs back to her room where he is to see who's in her room, well, obviously no one's there. So you have these timelines that come into connection. It's a story that is weird. There's a bit of time travel element to it. There's also lore, and it's atmospheric. It's dark. It's so many things. The timelines, the way it's done, I think it's done really well, especially like when the two merge and are together. And I really thought this was a fantastic read. Definitely up there in some of my favorite horror I've read this year. Okay, after that, I read a gothic horror, which is like slow and syrupy, and that was Spoiled Milk by Avery Curran. Not my favorite title for a book. This follows this story of these girls who go to this all-girls school. And one of the girls from the school, named Violet, on her 18th birthday, she falls over this like balcony and dies. And the other girls kind of think like it was not an accident. They think that she was murdered. And so they need to prove it. And so they're like, maybe we should have a seance and see if we can contact Violet and get some answers. And so they go ahead and do this. And then eventually maybe Violet does come through, but it's kind of hazy and the answers aren't exactly what they thought they would be. But it also seems like there's this like festering evil in the school that has been like kind of growing and is gonna try to take out everyone there until there's nothing left. And at first it starts with, you guessed it, curdled milk and bad meat and like weird bugs in the porridge. Then stuff just turns and goes south from there. If you're not a fan of slow burns, like this is a slow burn for, I would say 80% of the book. And then the last 20%, it like picks up and takes off. But until that point in time, like it's building characters, it's building atmosphere, it's building story, and it moves very slowly. But I thought it was an enjoyable read. Next up, we have a wondrously weird horror, and that is The Caretaker by Marcus Klewer. Now, if you're someone who does not like endings that are open endings, I wouldn't recommend this book for you. But if you do like open endings and you like weird books that keep your wheels turning in the brain, this one's great. If you read We Used to Live Here by this author as well, that one's also super weird. The ending's kind of open, you know, it leaves stuff to the imagination. So he's got that kind of vibe going on. This one, there's an ad that's put on Craigslist for this woman, Grace, needs a caretaker to come and take care of her husband. This other younger woman has an interview and stuff isn't quite what it seems when she gets there. Like the job seems to be a lot different from what she was told in the beginning, and there's all this weird stuff that needs to be done. These rites that needs to be followed. Where do we even start? It starts with like supposedly faulty wiring and having the lights, making sure they're off within a 3-minute window. And then if you don't do that in time, the things accelerate and things go from weird to bad to worse. And so when that happens, you get then next these invasive bunnies, and somehow they get into the house. And if they get in the house, you have to get them out of the house immediately. And if you can't, then you have to dispose of them. And if you don't do that in time, something will happen and stuff accelerates. And then the visitors come. And who the F are the visitors? I still have no idea, you guys. Still don't. I've probably said this now in like 3 different videos. Who or what are the visitors? Well, they come, they knock on the door. You gotta go out in the woods and find them. And you gotta calm them down and make sure they don't freak out. And if they do freak out, you gotta run your butt back to the house and get there before they do and shut and lock the door so they don't get in. If they do get in, that's gonna be bad. But also, you're gonna get a phone call from who knows frickin' who, and they're gonna tell you what you need to do next. And then there's all these letters that you should refer to if you fail steps 1, 2, or 3. And like stuff's like super weird. I don't even know. What did I read when I read that? I don't know, but I want to read it again because I still think about it. Like it's still in my brain. The ending, oh my God. I was just like, what? I was like, are you serious? And at first I was like, do I not like this? And I was like, no, I do. I do like this. I don't know. I like weird stuff. So that kind of book appeals to me. And I know it does not appeal to everyone. So like I said, if you don't like open endings, don't read it because you're probably not going to have a good time. Let's be honest. But if you do, it's an excellent time. So next we have a folk horror, and that is Grace by A.M. Shine. There is this woman named Grace. She was adopted, I think, when she was like 4 years old. She never knew who her biological parents were. Her dad died when she was like super young, and then her mom, turns out, recently passes away. One day she gets a phone call, and it's this priest from the island where her mother grew up, this like small island off the coast of Ireland that no one really goes there, and there's a bunch of like weird lore about the island. The priest is like, your mom left everything to you. If you want, I can just sell everything and get you the money. You don't have to actually come here. But Grace is like, no, I want to kind of know about my family, where I come from. I want to see the house. So she goes to this island. There's like only one captain that will go to and from this island because it seems almost like it's cursed or something freaking weird. There's no children that have been born on the island in 40 years, and the population is like slowly dwindling. When Grace's mom died, it seems like an old evil has reawoken, and having Grace back on that island is gonna make it even worse. Oh, Grace, what are you doing? I thought this book was pretty fantastic. It's atmospheric, there's weird lore, there's portals, there is spirits that are evil, there is just some effed up stuff happening in this. And it was the first time I read this author. I hadn't heard of them before, but apparently they were the author that wrote The Watchers, which they made a movie out of. So next we have The Devil in Oxford, a Ruby Vaughan mystery by Jess Armstrong. All right, so this book has like weird, esoteric, occult vibes. So there's this disgraced scholar, Julius Harker. He has this like museum of oddities and curiosities and whatever. And a lot of it's kind of like fake stuff, but some of the stuff and some of his artifacts are actually like legit, but he doesn't have like the best reputation. Apparently he did something a long time ago that got him like kicked out of this college, and so people look down on him and this, that, and the other. But apparently he's been collecting these like Egyptian artifacts that have been missing for a bunch of years, and he's going to show it off at this big event. But then things turn bad, and then he's found among the artifacts dead at his own show, and this kicks off the mystery that Ruby Vaughan decides that she's going to be the one to solve. And it's weird, and it's occultish, and it's a super fun mystery, and I would definitely read more in this Ruby Vaughan series. And I don't know which book this is. Maybe it's the third book. I never read mysteries in order, because honestly, I most of the time don't feel like you have to. Do I feel like I was missing out on anything by not reading like the other first two? I don't think so. I don't know. Mysteries are kind of a different animal for me because you'll have some of the storyline that carries over, but most of it, like the mystery is another different mystery that's independent of the other ones. So, okay, next up we have Bog Queen by Anna North. This one is a little bit horror, a little bit historical fiction, a little bit eco-lit. Like there's a little bit of this, that, and the other going on. So there's this body of this woman who is discovered in a bog. And at first they think it's like this woman who was killed in 1961 because this guy came forward that was this woman's husband that said, yeah, I chucked her body in the bog, this, that, and the other. But it turns out this body is not that. This body is from like 2,000 years ago. And they also found some artifacts with her. So our main character, Agnes, comes in. She's a forensic anthropologist. So she identifies this. And she's like, yeah, no, this is not that woman that this guy said he murdered. But at the same time, one of the other women's who was murdered family members shows up. And then she's all pissed off. She's like, what do you mean this isn't my aunt? I want to take the body home and like finally have some closure here and bury her. Agnes is like, this is a 2,000-year-old body. It's not your aunt. And so also at the same time, there are these peat cutters that's how the body was found, that are like tearing up the bog and destroying it because they're going to put like buildings and I think a neighborhood there or something along those lines. But then you also have the environmentalists who are trying to put a stop to this. So, and then you have Agnes in the middle of all this because they found this body as a historical find. So that puts a wrench in like everything. So she's got to deal with the peat cutter. She's also got to deal with the environmentalists and like how she fits into all this in the middle because she really just wants to study this body and learn about this woman and what happened to her and her history and all that stuff. And this is quite the enjoyable read. Like I love stories that have to do with the outdoors or environments like the bog or the forest or the swamp. So it was right up my alley. I thought it was a pretty fantastic read. Okay. And then we have a dark fantasy that was very highly disturbing. And that is Honeysuckle by Barford Mantel. So this follows the story of this boy, Rory, when he's 8 years old. He's super annoying little brother, and his sister creates for him a girl made of flowers, which is called Blodawed, and he calls her Day. And they grow up together, and they're like best friends from the time they're like kids and on. And as she gets older, he wants to extend her life because at the end of each season she falls apart because, well, she's made of flowers and things that decay at a faster rate than normal things. So he starts to experiment and do this other stuff. And the thing is, like, does Day even want this? Does she even have a say? And it's about her being able to have her own independence, which she does not. And pretty much like she was created by intention. When she's awoken, the person that awakens her, like their intent, she kind of has to do what they say, or at least they think that's how this works. And so supposedly like Rory's doing all this stuff for Day, but really it's him just being very selfish. And then eventually he falls in love with her. But can she even say no to his amorous intentions? Because as this construct, she's not really a human, and it's like effed up and it's sad and it's dark, and I hated Rory. I thought he was a POS, and the only thing to me that really made reading this book worth it is the ending, because the ending was truly fitting and I thought it was pretty fantastic. But like I was highly disturbed throughout the whole thing, and I was like, I hate this. It's very awkward to read about because you just see the way that Day is treated and you're like, none of this is right, and it's kind of horrible. Rory is a POS, and I hate him. It's a very uncomfortable subject matter to read. So out of all of these, I think my favorites were Japanese Gothic by Kylie Lee Baker, Awesome and Weird, and I loved The Caretaker by Marcus Klewer. So what has been the best books that you've read this month? Let me know. I'm always curious. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.